What if a tiny bit of text could hijack an entire website? That's cross-site scripting, or also known as XSS. And today we'll see what it is and why it's dangerous. Quick important note, this video is for education and defense only. Never test or attack systems you don't own or have written permission to test. If you find a real issue, use responsible disclosure. A message traveling from one user's browser to another, then being altered. At a high level, XSS happens when an application accepts untrusted input and later displays it to other users without properly handling it. That untrusted content can behave like code in the victim's browser, and that's where the trouble starts. To understand the true impact of cross-site scripting, it's actually quite simple. When a browser logs in a user, they store some sort of cookie or some sort of session ID and other details such as their emails and many other things. So when a cross-site scripting attack happens, this data could be potentially compromised. And not only does it affect the victim, it also affects maybe an administrator who might have viewed that data from their admin's perspective, and that could give the attacker complete access to the entire system. So that just shows this severity of a cross-site scripting attack. There are three high-level categories: reflected XSS, stored XSS, and DOM-based XSS, or document object model based XSS. Here we have a live text preview. So if I were to see if whatever I write here, hi there, or please subscribe, which you should do because it is free, and it's really difficult to make these videos, especially with all the things I have going on as well. So let's take a look. I've just vibe coded this because it's a demo, and so you'll see that whatever I type gets live updated. Hi there. And if you were to put in something like this, it just goes on nicely, nothing. But the thing with cross-site scripting attacks is when you're usually going to link it to a JavaScript. You're gonna have to find a way to execute JavaScript inside an element. So usually this can be some sort of comment section, or if you're using Burp Suite or some sort of tool which will allow you to modify the requests, then you could probably use you could probably make even the email sign up links as the cross-site scripting attack field. And so I'll show you basically what happens. So the way most sites that are vulnerable to cross-site scripting, even if they are vulnerable, so even if you were to say load up something like this you can see that there's no preview happening because now this is being treated as HTML. And if I were to inspect the page, you will see that there is actually a script tag, but it's grayed out, and this is a security feature that many browsers have. So while this might work on older browsers, this is definitely not very secure. This already tells you that the site is probably vulnerable to a cross-site scripting attack. So now let's take a look at a difference, which is to use an image tag. Now you might be saying, how would I execute some sort of image tag? It doesn't make sense to be executing an image tag for JavaScript, right? But it's quite simple actually once you understand. In image tags, there's this thing called on load, or not just images, in fact, on load or on hover, and there's one specific one that we'll look into, and that is on error. And this is usually when when an error occurs in loading the image, we want it to alert 1. And now you'll see that because there is no error, if you were to just inspect the page, you'll find that there is an image, and on error it should alert 1. But there is no error happening because we haven't defined a source. Now usually what you'll do is you'll usually do something like this, and then you'll say HTTPS something. But what we are going to do here is we're going to obfuscate the thing. We're going to provide it a non-functional URL, so meaning it's not going to lead to anywhere. So simply X, and as you can see, this pops up. what's happening is this image is now being set to X. The source is X. Could not load the image because there is no image at X. There's no way for the browser to find an image called X. If you were to just search in the browser X, you're not going to be able to find anything. You're not going to get an image of X just from putting the URL of X. That's why what's happening is that's when the on error gets triggered, and now your alert one happens and your site has now been compromised. This is one of them. There's and as you might have seen that we were using alert one dialogues, and this is also one of the most common practices to find cross-site scripting. So maybe if you were to go back, use Wayback Machine, you might be able to find the older version of YouTube that might have been vulnerable to cross-site scripting attacks, but that depends whether that version of YouTube actually supported JavaScript, and many other factors are there as well. So of course now there is a lot of stuff that we can do. These cross-site scriptings, usually what you'll have is you'll have the image source is equal to X, on error is equal to, and the on error will lead to some really weird JavaScript code. So if you ever find some sort of big URL, some weird source is equal to X on error while you're browsing the web, normally you should probably report it, and you should probably delete your cookies and try and secure yourself, because you probably become vulnerable to a cross-site scripting attack. You've become a victim. Yeah.